moderate this event. We've got some of our best technical resources that have been really knee deep within the healthcare industry over the last couple of years. Lance Hart and John Lloyd. John and Lance, do you want to give a quick introduction on some of the things you've worked on and your background? Lance, why don't you
Yeah,
start?
go ahead, John.
Oh, all right. John Lloyd, I've been with CBTS for about 10 years in a myriad of different roles. Really, for the last, I would say, 5 or 6, have been heavily focused around complex, large networks, both for data and voice. And really, over the last 6 to 8 months, has been far more heavily focused on the cloud and really the role that that's playing in the network. So I've kind of walked through each of these different phases over the last few years. And right now, what we're really tasked with is really going after that kind of complex nature of healthcare, of what are those things that are unique and different. And I don't mean from HIPAA or compliance, obviously those are important, but kind of lessons learned when you go into large healthcare systems. What are those unique idiosyncrasies and how do we deliver on them and meet those needs where a lot of people really are falling short? Lance?
Yeah, hi, Lance Hart. Been with the organization. This is, I think, my 12th year, so a little over 11 years. Um, Work mostly today in a kind of a pre-sales position where I help strategic customers, specifically healthcare customers, government customers, things like that, to kind of discuss their challenges, what they're trying to accomplish, and how to, kind of streamline their communications. And specifically, like John, I'm in the communications practice myself, so I kind of focus on the comms products.
Great. I've been with the company 14 years, and so I've seen a lot of changes in the industry. I know this topic is the top 4 cloud solutions to improve patient outcomes, and man, there's been a lot of change even in the last 2 years as it relates to patient outcomes. Lance, what do you see, first of all, some of the differences between, as you've worked, because I know you've worked with very large enterprise and healthcare. What do you see as some of the differences between those industries when you're working with a hospital system versus an enterprise client?
Yeah, I think really some of the challenges, specifically in healthcare, have to really do with what access we have to facilities. Um, we know that it takes a lot longer to do things in healthcare than with other enterprise customers, specifically when we have to get access to certain areas, patient rooms, and different areas like that. We know there's a challenge there. We know there's a challenge with training because you can't take away those folks away from their jobs. So we got to come up with a more creative way to provide training to nurses and doctors and staff, so they can maintain focusing on patients. Um, but I think it's also security and redundancy. Those are things that we have to really focus on, when it comes to healthcare, more so. Not that enterprise organizations don't need security and redundancy, but, as John mentioned, HIPAA, we also understand, the amount of redundancy a hospital's network usually has. So we have to kind of bake into that. But for acute care facilities, make sure those facilities can stay up 24/7, on their own if they lose all connectivity to the outside world. So those are things that, are unique and challenging and, compared to some enterprise customers. John.
Yeah, so what I would add to that is some of the technology, right? So when you go into a large enterprise, you may go in and say, well, we have some analog needs. Maybe I need an ATA or some kind of analog gateway for elevator or fax lines, right? When you go into a hospital, you've got 30, 40, 50 patient rooms. Well, you've got these cheap $5 plastic phones sitting there because as soon as that patient checks out, you spray them down with chemicals to sanitize them, and those are going to break. And so we don't want to, the industry's tried for a while now. How do we move to SIP? How do we take advantage of things like Teams or WebEx and telehealth and start to integrate that into the patient experience? And at the end of the day, what it boils down to is these are devices that are designed to be sprayed down with chemicals and cleaned and sanitized. And so now I've got this challenge of how do I deliver maybe legacy or older technology? We still have to keep crash carts up and working, right? Pagers, the last paging is still a thing for doctors, and a lot of that is what if you get cut off. And I think the second thing, and Lance talked about resiliency and uptime, and a lot of enterprise organizations are focused on that. The difference in healthcare, not just that tagline of lives are at stake, but it's, well, how can you design for it? You can't build a hot site for an operating room. So when we build out for hospitals, we're building out for not only what is the impact of having an operating room go offline, but understanding that you can't send doctors, nurses, surgeons home to do their job, right? So how do we build these facilities out for that in mind, not for building the network to be able to be reachable from home? It's a completely different level of redundancy when we start to build it out. So there's a lot of those kind of key differences, time and money and all of that can be similar across them, but I think it's the implications and some of the physical and security constraints that Lance talked about in healthcare.
Dig into some of the technology that or the application or use cases that you're seeing kind of come up in the industry. I know we've worked on some of those, John, together, and Lance. What are some of those things that you see changing? I know that at one point, hospitals were one of the last to adopt UCaaS for some of the same redundancy reasons that you've talked about. I know that SDWAN and the networks within those hospital systems. To talk about what are some of the opportunities that that are now healthcare's embracing that they maybe haven't in the past.
Yeah, I think so. You hit on UCaaS, right? And I think one of the things we start talking with customers, there's a unique set of needs that retail has, right? And that's why retail, we see these products take off, and enterprise tend to buy in this, OEM or this technology. Healthcare is unique because we kind of encompass different verticals. Your remote doctor's offices or branches really are kind of retail, right? They're open 8 to 5, and they have a handful of doctors and employees, and the impact of them going down is really annoying for the patients that day, but probably not, mission critical or life altering. Then you have your, acute care facilities, the large hospitals, and then you have these data center networks, and these are ever growing and robust. And so how do we start to deliver technologies that can fill those different needs of these different business units running inside of a hospital? And I think the big shift that we've seen to that, because of such inorganic growth of a consolidation of hospital systems, of doctors' offices and things like that, voice has become one of those new ones. And I don't think it's necessarily in that UCaaS space. It's not just about the call control sitting in the cloud. It's not about moving to an operational expense model. It's about getting out of the world of, in the past, healthcare built one network and you plug sites into it. You built one phone system and you plug sites into it. And whether it's through inorganic growth, that now I have all these Avaya, red and blue, and these old Nortel, ShoreTel phone systems out there at 300 some doctors' offices that I've got to tie back, or if it's the advent of Microsoft Teams and where more and more organizations are wanting to move to that collaborative technology, but we can't do that yet, for nurses' stations that need to have this kind of shared line appearance, these sorts of needs. It's not a one size fits all. And I think that's what's really moved healthcare into this UCaaS space, is how can I find a provider and a partner that can bring me a Microsoft Teams plan, manage my on-prem phone system with SIP trunking, bring me a contact center, bring me my Cisco call manager into the cloud, help migrate these 300 some doctors' offices onto this platform. And that's the other piece. When you start to think about even a big project of retail, it becomes rinse and repeat. I've got 1,000 sites, but I build out for one small site and I just do that 1,000 times. That's not really the case here in healthcare. We've got some 50,000, 80,000 handsets. The white glove nature that's needed. We and carriers in the past used to drop circuits to your front door, and then it was your problem. And then UCaaS came along, and that was kind of a, we'll hand you phones, and then it's your problem. You go plug them in, right? We'll do the telephony in the cloud. You connect to us, over the internet. We give you the phones, and now it's your problem. That doesn't work with large healthcare. You can't hand them phones and say it's your problem. And there's 50,000, handsets, and to Lance's point, there's needs for access. So it's really about what's changed is us being able to go in and deliver that white glove level of treatment, of delivering those analog cross connects for some 100 hospital beds. It's the ability to go in and help this change and this migration for the size and the business units, and understanding how do you cable in an operating room and what kind of redundancies do you build in. So that's been the big shift, is this kind of consolidation and a need to find a partner to help bring it in one roof.
Is that the differentiation? You know, a lot of trusted advisors on the call here are saying, okay, I've got my typical UCaaS provider that I'm comfortable with, that I bring into, you know, 50 seats, 100 seats, 5 seats. It works well for that kind of small business. Why would why wouldn't I just bring them into a hospital system? Is it that white glove that's the differentiator that you see? Is it during the implementation or interrogation? What are kind
I
of
think it's what we've been exposed to in our experience, right? I mean, since the 80s, we've been putting in Avaya in hospital systems and on-premise platforms, right? And then we put Cisco systems in, you know, on-premise platforms. So as we progressed to, you know, a UCaaS solution and started offering that as a service to our customers, when we started bundling in what we learned over the years and how we interface with hospitals and their processes, and you know how long it takes to be able to get into a patient room to touch an analog line that's on the wall, we've taken all these things into consideration as we build, you know, our UCaaS solution, and really, I think we come to the plate with a really good understanding of what it takes to deliver healthcare. I think some of our competitors, maybe especially in the over the top space, they don't really understand. You know, they're just going to quote out what they normally quote out, and feel like they're going to go in and have a successful project. But the reality is, there's a lot of, you know, areas that you can get stuck in, and we've kind of been stuck in those areas before, and we've learned from our mistakes, right? So we have that experience that I think that you know is really put us in a very good position to provide healthcare services.
And I think, you know, we also have a different platform that we don't put into large hospitals, right? We have our hosted UC platform, and it's designed for a lot of what that competitive space is. And people make a mistake, I think, sometimes, of thinking that because some of those players that maybe started as SMB offerers have started to really focus on contact center or bring more features and say, well, now they're an enterprise ready technology, right? Because they have these features now. That's not what healthcare is about. It's not enterprise features. It's enterprise deliverable. It's, you know, redundant data centers. It's HIPAA compliance. It's project management. It's delivering service delivery managers. It's wiring teams on site, right? It's this whole experience. So we have our hosted enterprise UC and we have our hosted UC. And when we go in and talk with healthcare, we're not talking about our hosted UC, because that's our over the top. We send you phones. We make sure the call control works in the cloud, but best of luck to you. And that just doesn't work in healthcare. And I think that's the difference when you start to look at, well, you know, company XYZ, they've really added new features. Fantastic. What is the back end to that? What are the employees behind it? What does their project management team look like? Can they dedicate a team of 10 engineers for 18 to 24 months that this rollout is going to take specifically to this one customer in this white glove treatment?
John, you hit on the network side of it, and you hit on this inorganic growth. I think another way to say that is, you know, there was massive consolidation of hospitals buying doctors' offices, and now you've cobbled together, you know, six major hospitals, maybe some office buildings, small doctors' offices, and that is the healthcare network that they've now somewhat inherited through that inorganic growth. Obviously, there might be legacy equipment in there, but talk about the networks. How did those healthcare systems string together those networks, maybe in the past, and then now with the advent of moving to the cloud, what do things like SD-WAN mean for either that replacement or for, I know we've had it with some hospital systems where they've got a new hospital going in and they're looking for, how do I get it up and running very quickly? Do I embrace the old way to do network, or do I look at the new way?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. So the first is, well, one, what is SD-WAN? Where does it fit? Well, as healthcare, I'm always designing for more uptime. right? I'm always designing to say, how do I stay up? So in my traditional data center or large hospital environments, SD-WAN is not going to hurt anything. It's going to give me an overlay that allows me to bring in multiple connections. Maybe it's legacy layer 2 VPLS or MPLS, right? But I can start to bring in failovers. The other thing is patient experience. So maybe I'm starting to bring in internet connectivity just for an enhanced patient experience, Wi-Fi and things like that. But the other component becomes, well, I need this standardization to manage it. So when I bought a doctor's office of 20 sites in this practice, I'm dropping 20 MPLS circuits to get it on and get it into this network. Well, it's expensive and it's probably overkill because, again, we kind of talked about it. They kind of really take this retail identity where a couple of broadband circuits and an LTE for failover would save money, give me diverse carriers, probably give me more uptime than an MPLS. Oh, but how do I manage that? And that's really where SD-WAN can come in. When we start talking about things being cloud controlled from a cloud control plane, being able to send things to a centralized logging environment or SIM tool, now all of a sudden I can build out these doctors' offices with our network as a service platform. We can build them out with SD-WAN, and I can start to have this network standardization, but that standardization is focused on the management plane and on the overlay. I don't need to buy expensive legacy 90-day, 120-day lead time circuits where I'm overpaying for just to get this convenience of centralized management. So that's really the role SD-WAN and network as a service play. They can fit into any of those kind of 3 distinct business units within the hospital, do their very specific job for that business unit with one control plane.
Yeah, that makes sense. You mentioned a couple technologies that you mentioned Cisco, you mentioned Meraki. I know you've talked SD-WAN for a lot of our partners. They know that that's many times powered by Velo and VM. I've heard we're talking about Microsoft. I see Cisco on your lapel. Like, if I'm a trusted advisor, I may know CBTS as Cisco in the channel. But you've now mentioned a lot of different OEMs. How are you bringing those things together? And are hospitals asking you to bring those together, right?
Yeah, I think here's the key. It's about best of breed. And when you go at it alone from an end customer, you sometimes have to sacrifice, right? They always say a good, fast, cheap, choose two. Same sort of concept, right? Do you want specialization or do you want standardization? I want the best of breed, but I can't go and grow my team. I can't go and build out all of these, specialties to be able to do. Maybe it's Checkpoint for a SASE platform, but maybe it's Cisco for route switch, but it's VeloCloud for SD-WAN over the top, right? It's Meraki for a network as a service, and maybe it's Aruba for my access points, and I'm trying to get more into wayfinding. And that's really the benefit of where the CBTS come in, right? It's the ability. We're a very large healthcare system in Indiana right now. We are their SD-WAN provider that is built on Velo, and there's a lot of great case studies of how CBTS and VeloCloud partnered with IU Health at the onset of the pandemic to go and take and build hospitals out in remote areas, out in abandoned shopping parking lots and parks and things like that, and really take healthcare out into the community, and how we were able to do that with SD-WAN. But the other funny, we're doing a lot of F5 work right now for them on their load balancing front. And that's the value that we start to bring in, is we don't need you to focus on it's all got to be the same so that you can have expertise in it. We allow you to focus on best of breed, bring the technology that makes sense for whatever that purpose is, whatever that business outcome is you're looking for. And we put this CBTS wrapper around it where you get one number to call. You get reporting from our SDMs each month showing you what ticket history looked like in our response times. And we integrate our service now to yours so you can hold us accountable to the SLAs and things like that we're bringing. And so that's, while CBTS is Cisco in the channel, I think we've found a way to be able to take what was a traditional infrastructure or hardware sale, where one, that sometimes excluded the channel, and two, is not really where customers want to go anymore. Customers are looking for utility models. Customers are looking for things that can ebb and flow or scale up and scale down. But I think that's just a key component, right? We're still VeloCloud Partner of the Year for the Americas. We've still been leading that SD-WAN charge. We were an early adopter and first to market in that space. And that's really the value that we bring, is to be able to stand between the customer and the logo, right? Just as our partners stand between the customer and us and our competitors, right? And they want to understand what are your outcomes and goals and make sure we're putting the right thing in place, right? We hope that CBTS is the right thing for our partners and the trusted advisors of the end customer. We're doing the same thing between the different technologies and making sure that it meets their needs.
Yeah, there is a lot of new technology that these healthcare systems are asking us, and we're lucky enough to get invited, by our trusted advisors in once we're able to demonstrate our expertise to kind of show off what's possible. Lance, you brought up something that I think is key: is how do you get from where you are today to where you may want to go? And I'll pick back on voice, and you mentioned it, kind of our history. Talk about the maybe interrogation that we can do, or that you've seen help get a customer from, okay, help me know what I have, to then what John's saying is kind of where I want to be. So kind of talk through how, and because you have experience in that, how we go through the interrogation and help customers, get out of the old.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of customers have a fairly good understanding of where they're at today, which is very helpful. We do have certain customers that maybe have some platforms and systems that they don't really have folks that even have access to those anymore because they can't retain that stuff, like Avaya, or maybe you go to Nortel, Avaya Blue, right? And having access to that content that they already have at their fingertips to be able to start to understand, well, what's in place today across those maybe family practices in the hospitals. I mean, I think back to our experience of, we do have folks, that we can send in that know the Avaya side, that know the Nortel side. They've got experience with other platforms and can help pull that out. Because sometimes it's hard to go and, to your existing business partner that is losing business and saying, hey, I need you to pull a bunch of data out of our platform so I can send it over to the competitor of yours that's going to take the business away from you. They're not going to be very helpful, right? So we have to have that ability and that skill in-house to go in and help pull that content from the customer, whether it's out of their systems, whether it's just, having sit downs with their call center folks to really understand how their call center functions. Are they centralized scheduling? What are your patient access initiatives that you've got going on the call center front? So we bring in call center folks that can kind of come in and help pull that data out, as well as just kind of going through a consultative interview process. It's kind of what John does all the time. He goes in and, talks with customers to kind of find out what they have. And then we take that away and we come back to them and say, here's where we think you could go. Right. So I think it's really just a consultative process that we're happy to go through with any of our customers to kind of help them get to the next level.
Yeah, I think leaning on that experience we've got, with Avaya, Cisco in our past, and then having a lot of familiarity, many of our partners understand that we've got some telephony roots in Hawaii and where we're headquartered. And so understanding being the carrier as also being the VAR for many years has given us that really expertise on telephony and those kind of things, as well as porting, right? Talk to me about that. If you're into voice, okay, I know what it's like to port a 30-person small business. What does porting look like when you work with a hospital system?
So
so I'll give you, go ahead, Lance.
Yeah, go ahead. What I was gonna say, John, is go ahead.
I was laughing because we just stood up a greenfield, brand new build, brand new hospital, and they have 200 phones. And we said, okay, great, this is easy. We don't even need to port numbers and they said, yeah, all we need is 2,000 consecutive DIDs. And we said, wait, hold on, you only have 200 phones. And they said, nope, we need 2,000 though. We need room for growth, and we don't want anybody to get confused and have any numbers near it. And I just thought, when you talk about number reporting, that's one of those unique things of healthcare. No other business. And we said, well, you understand this costs money. You got to pay every month. And they said, that's fine. We'd rather have them. We don't know what the future holds, and we don't want somebody to have something similar. So give us 2,000 phone numbers for our 200 phones. But go ahead, Lance.
Yeah, no, room for growth, right? Yeah, so from a porting perspective, there's multiple things that we can do. If the existing platform that's there today, it can support SIP trunking. A lot of times, what it does is it makes a lot of sense for us to integrate into our cloud via SIP, and then pre-port everything. Take everything you've got, pre-port it to us, and we send it back to you through that SIP trunk. So essentially, we've taken what was your voice gateway and where you had PSTN going to it, and we kind of become your voice gateway, and we send you back that content. Now that lets us go at really the pace that we want to go at when we want to schedule and deploy, and it gives us the freedom of, if anybody's gone through the porting scenarios in general, and they understand, hey, we did all this work, and we get all the way up to the day before, and we realize, shoot, we need one more day because this situation, you got to reschedule that port. And they may reschedule that port for 30 days out. And so now I can't, now I just screwed up my schedule by 30 days. Whereas, in the scenario that if your system does support SIP trunking, and we can send that SIP trunking back to you, and we kind of act as your voice gateway. Now we've pre-ported everything. We can go at whatever pace we'd like. And so much, in fact, that if somebody's like, hey, things are going really good, the CEO wants his phone cut tomorrow. And we're like, okay, you got a phone, take it to his desk. We program it, and there's no porting anything, because we're just not going to send that number back to your old platform, because now it's coming to us. So we can facilitate that much smoother, than other scenarios, and trying to port, each individual building, which is still sometimes needed if the existing platform doesn't support SIP.
That's a great point. I think that a lot of those elements, when you're talking about porting legacy systems, multiple best of breed providers that they're looking for, all these kind of things get wrapped into, and security and HIPAA, like they all get wrapped into this thing that we talk about in terms of healthcare, as well as the same business initiatives that we're seeing across the industry, which are applications moving to the cloud. And I know that a lot of hospital systems, patient care doesn't start when you get in the building anymore. It starts, when you're logging into an app, or you're getting your healthcare records at home. So a lot of those elements are getting, the back-end applications are being pushed to the cloud. And any thoughts there in terms of how we're addressing those needs, John?
I think so. There's a couple of different key technologies, right? One, obviously, cloud for data laking and real-time analytics, and being able to actionize data in the long term. In the short term, we see it with wireless access points and wayfinding, right? The ability, similar to, I've actually been doing some work with a large hospital, similar when you go to a football game or a baseball game, and if they have an app, and it will tell you where the wait times are at, go to, you're in section 208 and the line's, all the way out to the bathroom. But if you go to section 211, there is no wait, right? Those sorts of Bluetooth beaconing and wayfinding that are becoming kind of inherent to what the access points offer, but how do we utilize and how do we enable with like location and analytics, or an ALE server and engine, things like that. And what that allows me to do now, I'm in the hospital, so wayfinding to the closest vending machine or ice machine, or a wait times down in the cafeteria, but it's even further than that. And I'm sure people have noticed, in a lot of major cities, you'll be driving down and you'll see a billboard for a specific provider for an emergency room, and it'll say, right now the wait time is 11 minutes, it's 15 minutes. But think about the greater implications or application of it, right? So we don't want to be sitting in a waiting room. If I'm going to the ER because I have a serious physical injury, I don't want to be sitting next to somebody who has a serious virus or illness, and that's why they're in the emergency room. And so we start to tie in, almost like waitlisting technologies of mass notification, to be able to say, please stay in your car. We'll notify you when it's time to make your way in. Those sorts of things. The fact that using the cloud, data and ERP and those records, they're all around me. So now my patient experience is, maybe it's I'm sitting at home for telehealth. Maybe it's driving me for the best care at the right time through actionable location and analytics, or maybe it's, I'm in this work from anywhere world now that I've been enabled, and that's great. So maybe I'm taking a road trip and I'm working out of Starbucks or the back of my truck on during the week, but I'm hitting the road after hours and I'm exploring. Well, now I've got a medical issue. Well, I'm not waiting to get things faxed over, right? I've got Epic and all of my Cerner, whatever my platform is for medical electronic records. But that concept that actionable data is there and available, that's what takes that patient experience. It's no longer starting when I get into my hospital bed or wherever I went for care. It is literally following me anywhere I go, that access and that ability to communicate with my chart and see test results and email directly with the staff. Technology is playing a major role in that patient experience.
All right. Well, we have 8 minutes left. I know that there's a couple questions coming in. One of the questions is, we're seeing Microsoft in a lot of enterprise accounts, particularly with the adoption of Office 365. Are you seeing that in healthcare?
Quite a bit. We're seeing a lot of healthcare going all in. One of the big things that, we talked about it from a voice standpoint, and the same reason that we see a lot of large hospitals now moving to a cloud provider for voice is that idea of unification and standardization. And Microsoft really, those tools in 365, whether it be the Power X stack and using my Power Apps, whether it be search as a service built into O365, it being a control hub for my employee, right, where I can communicate, I can video chat, I can have actionable data and analytics from Power, I can collaborate with SharePoint and all of that in there. And so I think healthcare is, again, trying to fold in and tie in all of these business units into one cohesive, ubiquitous platform. And Microsoft right now is really the one that's raised his hand and stepped forward and really started to deliver this. And they've made a big commitment to healthcare. They bought a company called HoloLens that's really focused on the idea of smart surgery and remote surgery and this sort of patient experience. And I think you're going to continue to see more and more of it from Microsoft. And then obviously, the cloud is here in healthcare, and that's something that was probably 5 years behind everywhere else. But the amount of data and the drive, I think 365 made people more comfortable with Azure, made people more comfortable with the cloud, and a lot of the data analytics that GCP is doing. So I think Microsoft, there's not a healthcare organization I've talked to in the last 6 months that Microsoft wasn't, in the top 3 of their focus and initiatives.
And John, I think it's going to get even, Microsoft's going to get even more traction once they have their SIP gateway and that gets released. I don't know if you've looked at much of that right now. It's been talked about for a while, but when that happens and allows, third-party phones such as Polycom's, Yealinks, Cisco phones that are not necessarily registering direct to Microsoft today will be able to be used, within Microsoft via Microsoft SIP gateway. So I think that will be a big game changer, I think, down the road, for Microsoft as they continue to gain traction in healthcare.
Yeah, as well as, so there's some survivable technology that is slated for 22 for site branch, survivable branch appliances, and their ability to fail over and keep hospitals up and running. So I think, to your point, the third-party SIP gateway release that's imminent now for Q4, the enhancements on survivable branch appliances in the Microsoft space. And then the third piece I think that's going to be significant and really for our partners, it's important to understand is Operator Connect and where that's coming in at. And so essentially there was a thought that Microsoft could be a phone system without a company, right? I didn't need a partner. I didn't need somebody to manage it for me. I already had Microsoft Teams and I bought my E3 license and I bought the voice bolt-on, or I had E5, right? And all I had to do was say, yes, I want to make calls to the outside world. And that's great when you were sitting at your desk at home. And that's all it was. I just needed to be able to call direct to a couple people and I'm using my smartphone or my PC. Different environment when you get back into the office, which healthcare, hospitals always have been, right? So I think, to your point, just with third-party SIP gateway, well, your average, person doesn't understand how to configure OpenSIP credentials and tie that in and route that in. And so CBTS is an Operator Connect partner that it will be launching. We're already a Microsoft Direct routing partner today. And I think what's really unique for us, when you look at some of these platforms that maybe develop their own intellectual property in that hosted voice space, and they now are publishing and saying, here's why we're the perfect combination with Microsoft. I think there's a little bit more marketecture there than architecture there. And what we're saying is we really are all in with whatever the customer is trying to accomplish. So it is direct routing if you just need SIP to the PSTN. It is integration if we deliver our hosted enterprise UC, Cisco HCS in the cloud, but we tie in with Jabber and with direct routing, and we create, dial peering between that and Teams, and whatever that flavor looks like. So I think to say we're partnered with Microsoft can mean one of 4 or 5 different things, and CBTS can check all of those 4 or 5 boxes. Some of the companies out there that develop their own intellectual property from a voice platform are saying it. They're going to check one of those 4 boxes, and my guess is it's probably not what your customer really is wanting to check.
Great. Well, I'll wrap this thing up. Gabby, am I missing any other questions?
Now we are all set.
Okay. So for those trusted advisors out there, we hope that, some of this information is valuable. I think at the end of the day, one of the things is to give you comfort in our expertise in healthcare. Hopefully what you were able to hear from Lance and John are that, we have subject matter experts that not only know the technology, know how to talk to healthcare because we've worked with healthcare and have healthcare references that we can provide to your clients. So if you feel comfortable bringing us in, we're going to make you a hero in front of your healthcare client, because we've got folks that not only, again, talk the technology, but talk their industry and really have experience behind the scenes. Lastly, that not only are we talking the technology, but as you heard from John, we really are agnostic to much of the brand of technology, whether it be Avaya or Cisco or Checkpoint or Microsoft. All of these things that are in play are things that we do because as we don't write our own technology, we use best of breed, and so we're always bringing those together for a client. So we hope that this gave you levels of comfort. If you have a healthcare client that you'd like to talk to us about, feel free to reach out to your channel manager. Obviously, you can reach out to me. And then, even behind Lance and John are a whole host of other technical resources, both pre-sales, post-sales, that we'd love to get engaged and talk about the opportunity to see if it's a fit. So John, Lance, and Gabby, thank you so much for your time, and we will see you for many of these partners. We'll see you at Channel Partners in a couple weeks in Las Vegas. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Take care.